So when you're sounding it out with children, think, am I giving a plausible pronunciation? And I saw Stacey Solomon, love you, Stacey Solomon, working with Rex, and he was doing the word I, and he'd gone "yeah." I'll write it down because you might like to be visual, even though I know it's spelled by. So it's this one. So he'd gone "yeah," and she going, yeah, "yeah," that spells by. That's just how it is. It's silly, isn't it? Oh, I can't remember what it is. I love her. She's lovely. But I thought, nobody's told you about plausible pronunciation, Stacey Solomon. And your husband has struggled in school because of probably the same sort of stuff. So you need to be saying to Rex, actually, in this word, the "y" isn't a plausible pronunciation because we don't go "by," we go "by." So in this word, the plausible pronunciation is "I." So even if you've done no phonics, just think, what could the plausible pronunciation be? Good morning. Hope you're well. Excuse the state of me, just been to walk the dogs. Sam is about to jump up on me. Please don't jump up on me, you're wet. Just been for a swim. Just a thought for the day around plausible pronunciation. I talk about this a lot with people these days because people are teaching phonics. Now, I want you to separate out teaching children to connect letters and sounds, which is word mapping, that applies for every single word in the English language, bar two. But bar two, every single word in the English language, bar two, can be mapped. So think about the speech sounds and which letters map to those speech sounds. So phonics is just getting a child to be able to, because English orthography, the way the speech and the correspondences on paper connect, is a code. And the problem is we all speak differently, so we actually don't speak English in the same way. The way we say a word might change depending on how it is in the sentence, whatever else. So phonics is just purely and simply a way that we're trying to help children understand how speech and sound and the letters connect, letters and sounds. But the problem is that it's become such a, other than big money making whatever for people who have created a way to do it so that every child is taught in the same way at the same time and the teacher's at the front delivering it, and even though 1 in 4 can't read at the end of it, people still saying, so we need more, or you're not following that program with fidelity or whatever else. No, it ignores the basic principles of differentiation, and it ignores linguistic and neurodiversity, ignores how we learn, whatever. But anyway, the purpose is spot on. The purpose is, how do we help children? Because some children need more of our help than others. How do we help as many children as possible connect speech with print so that when they read a book in their accent, they say the same words, even though someone else is going to read the same passage and say it's completely different or with different expression, whatever else. But whereas like an Irish child might say, this is going to be an awful Irish accent, I do apologize, I had a bat. So think about the sounds. Someone else might say, I had a bath. Someone else might say, oh, I had a bath. So it's the same. You convert that into the same string of written words if you're a reader to I had a BATH, have whatever, and the whole thing changes. So if you were an alien coming down and saying, what is this string of sounds and whatever else, that everybody seems to understand it's the same words but just pronounced differently, whatever. What doesn't change is the written code. So what changes is the speech. What doesn't change is the written code, other than a few things like spelling grey in America with a GRAY, in England it's GREY. But let's forget those few little things. Predominantly, the written code is the same for everybody. So what we're trying to do with phonics is trying to help children have enough of the mapping of the sounds, the letters and sounds together, enough of that for their brains to go, oh, this is what we're doing, and they connect it. So actually a fluent reader might have only had a little tiny bit of explicit instruction of just a few correspondences, and then they go, and if they've got good phonemic awareness. If they haven't, then yeah, phonemic awareness is key. But if they have got good phonemic awareness, so they can hear those sounds. So if I give you a word like, ship, you can hear, if you've got good phonemic awareness, you can hear the sounds sh, it. They're part of it, and it's very it's not an exact, if you actually record the words and then splice them, it actually wouldn't be those sounds. Think about win, you know, in your head, you're going, oh, okay, 3 letters, W-I-N, win. I don't know how else you could pronounce it differently. Let's say win. But if you actually had to give the sounds for that word, you would end up going even if you're being really careful to try and make them as clean as possible and not add a schwa, which is that little sound. There's a lot of people go, don't say ba because it's b, whatever. But think about, you wouldn't be able to go win. We go ooh. You wouldn't be able to say to a child what's, you know, the sounds are ooh, because the child would go what. So it's very manufactured phonics. But most brains pick it up really quickly if they've got good phonemic awareness. But most children pick it up. So when we go they're not going they're going win. So they translate what you just did or what they do for convenience into that. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. Luckily, brains are brilliant and brains sort it out. Most brains sort it out. If you haven't got good phonemic awareness, you're going to struggle. But you're also going to struggle if you're learning synthetic phonics or whatever as a class program for all sorts of other reasons, maybe to do with your, you might be ADHD and just find the way that it's being taught is just, you know, whatever. You might be autodidactic and you just don't want someone else showing you. You want to just get on with it yourself and not be taught whatever. All sorts of different things go on. You might have, you know, your dad might have left last night and you're not emotionally, you know, able to take in that lesson, but that lesson doesn't get repeated because that was week 2, lesson 1, whatever else. So there's all sorts of stuff that goes into this. But phonics, let's just think of phonics as not a program. Let's think of phonics as word mapping on steroids. So phonics is often a program that is to kickstart what should be phonics throughout the whole code for every single word except for 2. So when we're talking about phonics, let's just think about connecting letters and sounds in the way that is going to help that child's brain go, oh, okay, got it now, thanks. And so that child who has good phonemic awareness, so you need to sort that out. If that child's got good phonemic awareness, then they can, however they got to the word, whether it's through a picture, through prediction, through someone's told them what the word is, whatever else, they say, oh, so that's the word picture. And then they go, oh, so it must be picture. Oh, so I didn't know that T could be the representation for ch. I thought it was just a CH, like chips and whatever else. So they start to explore the code that the phonics program might not actually teach, because the phonics program is just a kickstart. So plausible pronunciation. Why am I talking about this to death at the moment in training and whatever else? Okay, let me show you what. There's a passage in so this wonderful author, now it would be great if I was holding up Reading in the Brain, but I actually couldn't find it. I was just doing a quick thing. But anyway, this lovely chap who sort of studies reading and brains and all the rest of it, who wrote a book called Reading in the Brain. I'll find you the page number, but in his book, Reading in the Brain, it says about, we have got a universal spelling code, whatever it's called, the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. And he's basically saying, look, we do all speak differently, but actually we do have a kind of a system of being able to say, well, here's a word, transcribe it into phonetic symbols. Okay, if I look at those phonetic symbols, I can look at those symbols, blend them together if I've got the phonemic awareness, and know the word, even if I then translate it into my accent. So if that Irish child was to look at the phonetic symbols, and let's say that for BATH, let's say the phonetic symbol said, what would they say? They'd say bath. So let's say the phonetic symbols went b-arth. The child will go b-arth, bath. Oh, it's a bat. So it's a really good sort of universal, consistent way. And that's why if you look at Department of Education guide, you know, all sorts of stuff like the phonics screener check, it'll give the phonetic symbols, say these are, you know, acceptable pronunciations, whatever. The problem is most teachers don't know what those phonetic symbols are. But the International Phonetic Alphabet is brilliant for giving plausible pronunciations. So again, what do we mean by that? What I want teachers to understand when they're teaching phonics is we're helping the child connect letters and sounds enough so they can self-teach. So that that direct explicit instruction should be as quick and easy and out the way as possible, because most of learning to read is implicit. So that part that you're helping children with, that some children only need a tiny little bit, some children need an awful lot. So it's not even we can say, well, how many correspondents do they need to be? You know, I know there's a sweet spot for most, because I've been doing this so long, and I have an approach called the Speech Unpicks approach, which I deliberately called it an approach because I kept saying it's not a program. I don't want to create, you know, whatever. So we have the routine routines and whatever. But the whole idea of the speech sound picks approach is so that children have enough that they need, that they're learning at their pace, because the teacher's not at the front teaching, it's tech, and then the teacher's observing them, demonstrating what they've understood as they're going through this kickstart process of these 100 or so high frequency graph interphoning correspondence. But during that process, what I've been training teachers to do is to say, like, for example, right, here we go. Let's get on with plausible. Okay, here's a word. You straight away, if you can read this, will know what that word is. Don't think about it. You don't think about, you say it how you say it. England, I don't know how you would say it, but you just look at it, you don't think about it. And that's fine until you come to actually teaching children to connect those lessons and sounds, in which case what you're supposed to be able to do is, for the child, underline which letters go with which sounds. What would be a plausible pronunciation for this? So when you're looking at this in a word, if you were looking at this not in a word, you might say air. It could be air, like egg. Yeah, that's a plausible pronunciation for E, mapping with the sound air in the word egg. You might say it differently, but that's kind of a plausible one. Okay, here in phonics, you might look at this if it was isolated, not in the word, and go, yeah, plausible. It's like, for nest, whatever else. G could be a g, or when you say, it could be a j, like gentle, whatever else. Anyway, if you were to not know this word, so let's say you were a non-reader and you don't know the word, but you've learned a bit of phonics, you might go air. So that is a plausible pronunciation for us isolated grapheme. G, or a, and the poor child who's likely got poor phonemic awareness, and that's why they're struggling, is going to go air, England. Now, if there were some other clues, they might go, do you mean England? Which doesn't sound anything like what they've been taught in their phonics, or they've retained in their phonics. So their phonics program might have taught all sorts of different things, might have looked at this N as the representation for whatever. But that child hasn't done it. So that child is looking at it and going, what could it be? And I give this activity to teachers, and I give them a word that they've probably never heard pronounced before or whatever else. And I just say, what do you do? And they go from the left to the right. They look at the letters. They think, what's a plausible sound for that grapheme, whatever else? They put them together and go, well, it could be, I use GALLIMAUFRY a lot. So they go, could it be gallimorphy? Could it be gallimorphy? Call it gallimaufry? Call it gallimaufry? So we talk about all the different plausible pronunciations. If you don't know what the word is, of course, once someone tells you what the word is, the official, whoever decided however that word was created, that's when we know, oh, okay, so these letters map with these sounds and whatever else. But you've got here, so plausible pronunciation. So if the child knows this is the word England, air is not a plausible pronunciation. If the child knows this is the word England, or you know this is the word England, that is not a plausible representation for There is no England. Yes, there is a sorry. This one just there. So England. So this is why we duck count and we go E, G, O, and here a little schwa just at the end of gut there, just caught myself. E, G, O, and England. Now what I'm doing now is, if I say to you, give me the sounds in England, I'm asking you to give me the sounds I produced. I might say England. Sorry, it's Scottish. I can't think of a different way of saying it. But anyway, however I say it, which is what happens in the classroom, you're saying to the children, what are the sounds you can hear? And it's actually based on how I just said that word. So let's just do that for now. So I'm saying England. Okay, so I'm England. So I need you to be able to give me those sounds without getting distracted because you know how it's spelt or because of any other factor whatsoever. I literally need you to be able to give me the sounds E, G, O, and England. That's the first thing. So we have these principles of word mapping that first of all we think about what are the sounds we can hear. We might start off with the sounds the teacher says, or we might start off with, you tell me, the student, tell me how you say England. Okay, give me the sounds how you whatever, and we talk about them. We say, look at that, I say it one way, you say it the other way. Do you know there's a universal code? So if we didn't know each other or around the world or whatever else, there's kind of this way that everyone would say, well, we could do it this way, even if you say it differently. Now, in the speech sound picks approach, I like stories for everything children understand. So we have the speech sound king. And we had the story about the fact that the speech sound king wanted to create a written code, pictures of sounds, speech sound picks. And so he was thinking, what could the picture for at be in ant, So the first sentence he ever created was ant in pan, because he was saying to the prince, careful, there's a magic ant in the pan. No, don't let him out. So what I say to the children is the speech sound king. I know it's King's English, whatever else, happen to have a king now, but at the time we didn't want a queen. But the speech sound king, I'll say so he's like the, we're talking about the IPA. So he's like the one that goes, this is the IPA, kind of British IPA kind of one. So the king would say, well, actually, the sounds I created when I was creating this word and thinking about the pictures of sounds would be g, and England. Now we put a speech sound line underneath just so that it is, because children are often very, very visual. I'm very, they like to see. I even put 1, 2, 3 underneath to show the speech sound lines and numbers, because again, a lot of children can quite happily start from the right to the left when they're going and blending and whatever else. And if it's a word like nap, they can go pan, and you go, oh my goodness, maybe it's just because they blended them so they blended really well. They just didn't happen to go left to right. So let's think about England. So the sounds, the plausible sounds that you're to give to the child are the ones that relate to this word, and actually that relate to this universal code, the IPA. And England. Start there. Make sure they've got the phonemic editor blender. Start there. So show them a word. Ask how would the king do it. Map it as this universal code, and then say, but what are the sounds you would do? Now, what I've done is I've created these little phonemes. So the little IPA characters for children that are, I call the speech sound monsters. So little monster it would be there. So if we had the word like in the first part of, phonics that they're learning, let's say they've looked at sapin. So they've seen this for a picture for in the word in, just here. But when we're showing it here, we say, oh, but in this word, so it's always in this word, because it's isolated phonics gives you what it possibly could be, but we need to be putting it in words, real words. So in this word, the N doesn't represent the N sound. So if I had my little phonemes, my phoneme for I would be there. Sorry, they are the same N. My phoneme for I just there would be here. So the I is the picture for I in this word. And just the same as there, my phoneme for it would be there to say the I is the picture for it in this word. So in this word, and you know what they'd see? They'd see a different monster there, a different phoneme. I call it phoneme because they're phonemes that are brought to life, little characters. So they'd see a different one. So that it's visual. They're showing, here's the letter, the grapheme. Thanks, Kim. Here's the sound shown by the speech sound monster. Follow the monster sounds to say the word. First of all, so you know what the word is, because I might not be telling you that's the word England. So follow the monster sounds, blend them. Oh, it's England. Now have a look at the letters that the speech sound king created for this. Okay, so it's an E for the I, N for the G for the G, L for the L, for the U, A for the schwa, N for the D for the D. England. And then we would say, and in your accent, because we're helping them connect letters and sounds in their accent, in their brain. Not the King's English necessarily. That's just the kickstart. That's the universal way that we kind of start it off. So it's going to just be easier for children to be able to navigate it all, whatever they're doing. But what we're trying to do with individual words is store them. So we need the speech sounds, the spelling, and the meaning to store. And the speech sounds could be the way that they say it or whatever else, but that's storing it. Once you stored the word, they can with good phonemic awareness, they can recognize it straight away when they see it in, and they can spell it correctly. So if they came to writing, in their supposing England had just been playing football and they wrote it like that, their brain would go, hold on, ping, 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 that doesn't look right. And I always say to children, does that look right? And I'm asking them because I want to know if that word is stored in their brain. Because if it's stored in their brain, however weird the spelling is, whether it's not an I before an E and or whatever else, however weird the spelling is, if it's stored in the word, they will go, that doesn't look right. Even if it follows a spelling rule or whatever else you're teaching children, to more stuff to memorize, more cognitive load, whatever else. So we're keeping it really simple. We're saying to children, first of all, what are the sounds you can hear? Let's look at the word, which letters map with it, which are the pictures, the sounds. Thinking about the speech sound king, the IPA, thinking about how do you say it, and these discussions are what helps that child go, oh, okay. So very quickly they say, I've got it from here. Now, just a little note before I leave, because I've actually got to speak to somebody properly, and I'm not dressed properly and efficiently and whatever, officially. is this. Another core principle of effective word mapping. Phonics is, you know, structured to, you know, and it's often, I say this mental gymnastics, it's often comes with all these rules, all these yes buts, whatever else. I don't, my neurodivergent brain just doesn't like that. My brain likes mathematical. So that's why these principles of word mapping I'm going to be talking to you about, and plausible pronunciation. So it's not saying right, wrong, it's saying this is a plausible pronunciation, but how do you say it? And we're getting children through discovery, word mapping, to look at as many words as possible. They've got the good phonemic awareness there, storing the speech sounds, the spelling, and the meaning. So those brains, and we're exposing them to as many words as possible, not just the words that they can look at and decode using just those limited number of correspondences with phonics and whatever else. So anyway, we're doing this whole lot of stuff, which is about schema-driven, personalized learning, all this stuff that is really not in favor with education departments, because they want accountability, and you know, it's very difficult to track and data when you're actually teaching every child in the way they learn, and it's, you know, spontaneous, and oh goodness, you know, England 131 today, let's talk about England, let's do the word England, but it's not in my phonics and it doesn't follow the phonics rules, whatever else. So I'm just saying to people, let's focus on being teachers, not program followers, educators, hearts and minds. But anyway, the last thing I'm going to do before I go is, this principle is really important. Get children to use duck counts, lines and numbers before we do anything, so that you can see if they are hearing those sounds. So let's say for the word quit, what are the sounds you can hear? K, w, it, quit. Nice and simple. K, w, it, quit. K, w, it, quit. 4 phonemes, 4 speech sounds that you can hear. You might say quit, quit. I don't know however you'd say it, but however you say it, you're going to have 4 speech sounds. K, w, it, quit. Now, when the child is, and then you show them the word quit, and then it's really straightforward, because they'll know, oh, so the Q goes here, the U goes here, the I. And when they see a word like penguin and the U is the word there, it's not a surprise, and whatever else. Now, if in your phonics program you are told to do something which goes against the simplification of, because what we're doing is we're simplifying, aren't we? We're saying, what's the smallest, the sounds, and what's the simplest version of your mapping? So if in the phonics program, the child is being taught that is a grapheme, that can be a grapheme, but not in this word. So if the Q and the U are being taught to represent qu, and you're telling the child that's a sound, that's going against the very principles, the basic principles of what we're doing. And you're doing it because you know how to spell the word. And I do not know why everybody does the Q and the U as a grapheme in synthetic phonics programs. Didn't used to. I think that's, I don't know how that changed. It's like I've suddenly seen an NK as well as unk. Why? It's unk, you know, rink or blink, but or ink, blink. Why? I think it's because certain phonics programs are really, you know, used everywhere, do it. And so they're sort of saying, oh, the government probably saying, oh, let's add that to our grapheme, whatever else. It's absolutely ridiculous. The basic principles, I'll keep it simple. If it's blink, it's b-o-ink, blink, B-L-I-N-K, nice and simple. If it's quit, k-w-it, quit. I think the reason they do it is because the Q and the U is often together. But the trouble is, because the Q and the U are often together, people will know were it. Well, if you can blend anyway. So if you see the word quit and you go, I think it's perhaps it's so it's less graphemes, because the Q is the k and the U is the were, even though the U probably isn't taught as, I don't know, whatever the reason is, but let's put aside how people try and make up these phonics programs or whatever else. Phonemes are speech sounds, and we're trying to go the smallest unit. Graphemes are the letters that map with it. There can be lots of letters. A grapheme can consist of lots of letters. You know, the word 8, 8, 8, E-I-G-H is the A, the T is the T, whatever. It can be lots of different ones. And we can also have times when we actually can hear ourselves changing the sound from the beginning to the end, and it's still a phoneme. So we don't just have to have the phonemes that we start off with, like S, where it's the same sound at the beginning. You can have a different sound, you know, like think about you. Oh my goodness, I can hear you. I can hear my sounds change 3 times in that you, and yet unicorn, you know, that grapheme with with one letter represents that you, all of those. So when we're asking children to, it's very interesting to hear when they go, you, or whatever. And we could say, oh, so we actually could have you, like in the word you. Anyway, sorry, this is the stuff that I do with the children. But let's keep it really simple. Okay, so plausible pronunciations. Tell the child the words and say, how do you say it? This is how the speech thinking says. Kim saying, let's go. Which are the sounds that map with it or whatever. Talk to the children about the speech thinking or however you want to do it. Kim. Thank you. Talk to the children about the speech thinking, even if you're not using speech thinking approach. Talk about as an idea that someone created the code. How did they create it? They created it so everybody in the world would understand it, even though they knew that everybody in the world doesn't teach, doesn't read, doesn't speak in the same way. And so what did they do? They actually did it in the way that that a certain class of people and certain whatever, let's not go into the history. But so just talk to the children about this universal code. Talk to the children about plausible sounds. So if they're looking at, or you're looking at the word England, that A as an A in this word is not a plausible pronunciation, is it? Because it's not and or whatever, it's England. So that A is not a plausible pronunciation. So when you're sounding it out with children, think, am I giving a plausible pronunciation? And I saw Stacey Solomon, love you, Stacey Solomon, working with Rex, and he was doing the word by, and he'd gone yeah. I'll write it down because you might like to be visual, even though I know it's spelled by. So it's this one. So he'd gone, yeah, and she going, yeah, yeah, that spells by. That's just how it is. It's silly, isn't it? Oh, I can't remember what it is. I love her. She's lovely. But I thought, nobody's told you about plausible pronunciation, Stacey Solomon. And your husband has struggled in school because of probably the same sort of stuff. So you need to be saying to Rex, actually, in this word, the y isn't a plausible pronunciation because we don't go by, we go by. So in this word, the plausible pronunciation is I. So even if you've done no phonics, just think, what could the plausible pronunciation be? I'm going to leave you at that because I've got to go and I'm going to be late. So anyway, catch up with you another time. Thanks for watching. Bye. Bye.